Sonic and the Secret Rings is kind of a polarizing game. Releasing on the Wii in 2007, at the time it was actually reviewed quite well by critics, with IGN calling it his best game yet, which is funny considering they gave it a lower score than both adventure games and Heroes. Never change, IGN. And Eurogamer was bold enough to say that Sonic was back. Not without first shitting on everything people liked from the last couple Sonic games, though. Dear God, 2000s era Sonic game reviews were ass. But even in spite of its positive reviews from the time, I only ever see the game remembered negatively. Like any Sonic game, of course, it has its cult following, but most fans of the series I see nowadays write this game off as a total piece of shit. And I honestly don't think that's entirely fair to Secret Rings. Don't get me wrong, it very much does have issues, and I'll make sure to be very vocal about them when they arise. But this game has a lot more going for it than people give it credit for. And upon replaying it for this review, I've come to appreciate it much more. Let's just get the obvious complaints out of the way first so I can get some stuff I actually like. This game's controls are less than intuitive. It's one of those early Wii games where they didn't really know how to effectively use motion controls yet, so they just used it to replace basic movement. Moving left and right, the homing attack, and a whole lot more is all mapped to the motion controls of the Wii Remote. It's definitely not impossible to get used to. I didn't have much trouble getting back into it after not playing the game for a while, but it's definitely not preferable. I do think this control scheme works, at least when the game is designed around it, which it sometimes really feels like it isn't. Also, make sure you're playing with a decent Wii Remote. I tried using one of my old ones, and I could hardly get Sonic to homing attack. I switched to a newer one with Wii Motion Plus, and I had absolutely no troubles. The game also has an upgrade system, which I think harms the game overall. When you're starting out, Sonic controls like fucking molasses. You need to get upgrades to improve things like his acceleration, his left and right movement, his traction, you name it. The upgrades do help a lot and make Sonic feel a lot better to control, but I feel like Sonic should be fun to control from the get-go. With the upgrade system how it is, it makes the first few hours of gameplay feel like more of a slog than they need to be. That in combination with the unintuitive use of motion controls only serve to hold this game back. Let's finally get into the game itself. I think you have a good enough idea how much the controls are holding this game back by now. But wait, before we do that, we have to go through the absolute worst set of tutorials in any game I've ever played. There's nothing wrong with the contents of the tutorials, it's the fact that they're all separate tutorial stages. So you'll do some incredibly basic task like a walk forward and collect rings, beat the stage, go through some menus, select the next tutorial, do the jump tutorial, beat the stage, go through some menus, select the next tutorial, learn how to walk backwards, beat the stage, go through the menus, select the next tutorial, you get the idea. It would have worked a lot better if it just had one or two bigger tutorial levels. That way you cut down all the menuing. Menus and all, the tutorial only takes about 9 minutes, but it sure as hell feels a lot longer due to how repetitive it all is. Also, I'm not going to talk too much about the story here. It's a good Sonic story. Sonic's characterization is great. I'm just not much of a story person in Sonic games, so I can't really offer much commentary, and I don't want to just explain every cutscene as they happen. But yeah, the story is cool, and I like the presentation of the cutscenes. Now, without further ado, let's finally get into the actual game. Sand Oasis is a pretty cool first level. Nothing too complex gameplay-wise, but that works to its advantage considering how Sonic controls at this point in the game. There are a lot of distinct areas and set pieces, and every section of the level feels different. There's interior sections, desert sections, the part where you climb on the temple, sections with more water and greenery, there's the town you reach at the end. It really makes the level feel a lot less like a video game level and more like an actual area Sonic is running through, which is something I find a lot more modern Sonic games tend to struggle with. You're really telling me Frozen Factory 2 is a location in Sonic's world? Okay. Sure. But yeah, pretty fun level. The controls don't really get in the way much here since it's built very well around how Sonic handles. From here, we move on to the bulk of what actually makes up Sonic and the Secret Rings. Padding. Generally, I think the first get-to-the-goal mission of each zone is actually really solid and well put together. But if the game were just those missions, it would be way too short. So, every zone has a fuck ton of other missions, where the quality, varies. Usually they'll just throw you into a section of the main act with some modified object placements and some extra criteria, like killing 20 enemies or collecting 99 rings. Some of them can be fun. I like the breaking 5 jars mission since that doesn't break the pace of the level. Die Hard mission was just part of the main level with different object placements. The only one here that really fucking sucked was the Don't Break the Jars mission. It just puts fucking jars everywhere, so you have to go slow as fuck so you don't run into them and have to restart from the beginning. Who thought this was fun? I did find the part where Sonic says, "Let
Let me show you just how fast I am.
Right as I slowed to a halt to avoid some jars. Really funny. The real shitty part of this mission structure, though, is the fact there's literally no indication of what missions are required for progression and which ones are optional. You often unlock multiple at once, and they won't all be required, which means you can just wind up getting stuck on a really shitty mission only to find out completing it unlocks jack shit and you just wasted your time. After doing all the required missions here, you unlock the Sand Scorpion fight, which is a pretty standard modern Sonic chase style boss. It's actually laughably easy, even for the first boss. I had no trouble at all. Though maybe that's because I skipped this boss unintentionally and came back by a lot more upgrades than I should have at this point. Oops. The next level in this game is Dino Jungle, and god, replaying this game has reminded me just how fucking good the 2000 Sonic games are with spectacle. In a day and age where some of the more recent Sonic games seem to struggle with good spectacle and set pieces, it's crazy to look back at a game from Sonic's quote-unquote dark age and see them absolutely fucking nail it. Riding down rapid waters on a log after a bridge collapses, this shit is pure modern Sonic. These are the types of moments I want more of from this series. And also something, why are there dinosaurs in the Arabian Nights? Something, who cares? It's fucking cool. We get a Sonic level with fucking dinosaurs. None of the missions I had to do here were that bad. I died a few times at the start of the Don't Get Defeated mission, but that's because I'm bad at video games. Also, near the end of the Rampage mission, I hit a button that made a dinosaur's head move? Is he remote controlled? The race mission was a little difficult actually, not insanely hard, but just challenging enough to take a few tries. And after doing a mission where you break 5 spirit eggs, I got this world's world ring with relative ease. I do recall on a past playthrough I got really stuck on this annoying fucking mission where you have to bring 4 eggs with different patterns to the correct nests. But it turns out that one isn't required, so past me suffered through that shit for nothing. That's fun. Thanks Sonic and the Secret Rings mission structure. Evil Foundry is one of my favorite levels in this game. There's definitely a bit of a difficulty spike here, and the level is a bit longer, but that's not a bad thing. It still feels like fair difficulty, other than this weird rolling spike ball section that I'm not a patient enough person for. And not irritating bullshit, which, trust me, we'll be seeing later. The aesthetics here are on point, and this goddamn music, dude. Just fucking listen to this part and tell me this isn't peak 2000 Sonic. I've not really been talking about the story too much, but I do want to talk about this cutscene after this level, because I think it's really fucking cool. Basically, Razor Jin awakens this fire spirit Ifrit to burn the pages of the world, and Sonic goes to attack it before he realizes he can't fight it in his current state. So, he asks Shara to lend him her power, and...
Time break! Sorry, but we've got to run. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll get the chance to play again real soon.
After that cutscene, we unlock 2 new abilities, Speed Break and Time Break. Speed Break makes Sonic run off at full speed, kinda like the boost, but without total invulnerability. It's cool, if a bit situational. Time Break just kinda sucks. It would be more useful if it slowed down time without slowing down Sonic, but as is, even if you technically have more reaction time, Sonic's moving so fucking slow it's going to be annoying, if not impossible, to react anyways. Basically, no point in using it other than in certain fights. The next level is Levitated Ruin. Holy fucking shit, Levitated Ruin is not a very good level. And it's all because of this stupid fucking wind, which is way too strong, you can't do shit about! But wind gimmicks aside, first act is alright. I really like these segments which remind me of the squid fight from Frontiers. The music is super fucking good, I've actually been listening to it while I write this script. There's some decent platforming, but these vines are a little janky. I think it's really cool how the second mission starts where the first one ended, and honestly, at first, I thought I was gonna like this mission more than the first one. It's just a bunch of platforming challenges without the wind shit, right? But then I got to this part with these stupid fucking vines that hardly fucking work. Sonic fucking 4 had better vines than this shit. Sonic's switching between these on his own. I can only do the most basic possible fucking jump. And the 2D controls in this game are so janky. This game's controls are made for moving forward and not much else. Putting it on a 2D perspective makes it feel so fucking weird. And it makes basic moving that would be a breeze in any other Sonic game feel impossible. I don't even think that's the fault of the level design itself, it just doesn't work in tandem with how Sonic controls here. None of the other Levitated Ruin missions were that bad. The Rampage mission was funny as hell because they're just one enemy, so you just shake the Wii remote really hard, jump off the vine, and win. Pirate Storm is one of my favorite levels in this game based on aesthetics alone. The visuals in this stage are beautiful. The rain, the dark palette, the ships, it's just so fucking cool. The main act of this stage is decently long. It took me a good 7 minutes, which I'd say is a pretty good length for a Sonic stage. It has some of my favorite set pieces in the game. Sonic shooting himself out of a cannon, then riding the missile to the next section is sick. And Sonic surfing as a concept, I'm surprised wasn't done prior to this game. Really solid mix of spectacle and platforming. The only section that was kinda jank was the section where I had to go back and hit the spring to find a switch because it wasn't immediately obvious what I was supposed to be doing. None of the missions here were that bad, but I did struggle with the Die Hard mission quite a bit. Grind rails in this game don't fucking work half the time, so I didn't want to trust the grind rail at the end, which led to a few deaths. Eventually I just said fuck it and took the rail and it worked fine. Kinda made it harder on myself. After doing all the missions here, you find yourself at another boss, this time being Captain Bemoth. It's another pretty standard running fight with attacks that are pretty easy to dodge if you're paying attention, but the way you hit this boss is pretty unique, and I think it's cool. Basically, the source of this boss's power is its horn, so when you homing attack one of them, Sonic grabs onto it. You need to shake the Wii Remote to pull it out of his head. But you can't get too greedy, because if you do it for too long without jumping off, you'll get electrocuted. It's nothing crazy, but it does make this boss stand out among other fights that use this formula. After defeating the boss, you head back to Evil Foundry to fight the Ifrit Golem from earlier. And this boss is probably the jankiest in the game. It's the only one which isn't a running boss, and it kinda goes to show why the other ones are. You basically need to homing attack his hands when he's doing a specific attack, and then just do some homing attack chains to get to his head. It's pretty simple in concept. With how Sonic controls in this game, it can be kinda janky to target his hands. If you overshoot, you gotta awkwardly walk backwards to try and get to a spot where you can actually hit him. I struggled a lot with this boss when I was younger, but I'm thankfully much better at video games now than I was then and beat this boss with only a few failed attempts. Next level is Skeleton Dome, and you know something that I really like about this level? Every section is so visually distinct, it looks like it could basically be its own level. There's the outside part, the cave part, the mine part, the tomb part. You could have made a full level based on any of these sections, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye. The level design is pretty decent too. Nothing much really stood out to me beyond the visuals, but there wasn't anything wrong here. The missions here were mostly fine, but the kill 15 enemies mission was annoying as shit because the last room had these stupid disappearing enemies that were all above grind rails. So if you miss, Sonic would just grind the rail halfway to the fucking end. You have to walk backwards past moving spikes to get to the fucking enemies again. Also, there was this one mission where every time you looped around the stage, Sonic would say,
"So this is why they call it the Skeleton Dome. So this is why they call it the Skeleton Dome. The Skeleton Dome. The Skeleton Dome."
The final level in this game is Night Palace, and it was pretty good. The level opens with those wall shuffling sections, and even at this point in the game, I'm kind of way too impatient for these. But I did a cool jump and skipped like half of it, and I felt super fucking cool afterwards. That aside, love the aesthetics here. Sonic flying on a magic carpet is sick. I like the gimmick of the room stretching and needing to go through these little whatever the fuck these sections are to unlock the gates. I don't know what's going on here, but I think it's fucking cool. Let me tell you, the whole time I was replaying this game, there was one thing I felt fucking horrified of. This Eraser Jin boss fight before the final boss. Years ago, I remember struggling for what felt like an eternity to beat this horrific boss. His attacks would get too fast to react to, timing your homing attack seemed impossible, and I beat it first try. I don't know what the fuck past me was doing. I didn't die once. This shit was easy. After that total joke of a boss, I seriously don't know what I was struggling with my first time through. Assuming you've collected all 7 world rings, you can now move on to the true final boss. Me personally, I forgot to grab one and had to go back. Oops. Thankfully, you don't need to refight a razor to access the true final boss. As for the true final boss itself, the presentation is really cool, and Sonic getting a new form for the final boss is sick, and a concept I'm glad they finally brought back in Frontiers. But the gameplay is kind of boring. It basically amounts to shaking the Wii Remote to fill the soul gauge, dodging attacks, and sending the boss's projectiles back at him, then beating the shit out of him. Repeat 2 more times and the boss is done. I didn't really find it fun, I mostly just found it irritating because there was so much waiting involved. And I kept fucking up during the last phase and needed to go back to the start. Which is entirely a skill issue on my part, but still, didn't have fun with it. My heart was racing by the end of it, but that might just be from violently shaking the Wii Remote while it was like 300 degrees in my room. The final cutscene was cool as hell, and that marks the end of Sonic and the Secret Rings. Sonic and the Secret Rings is definitely a flawed game. The mission structure is flawed at best and infuriating at worst, and sometimes it feels like you're really fighting the game's controls. But I don't think the game deserves its reputation as one of Sonic's worst games. It's far from perfect, but it's not without merit. Buried underneath all its flaws, it was a pretty fun and unique Sonic game that I generally had a fun time with, even if there were times it irritated me. Which is why it's really cool to see an upcoming fan project which aims to remake the game with a more traditional control scheme. As of recording, Project Reignition's first demo only has a couple of Sand Oasis missions done, but it's an incredibly promising project that's definitely worth checking out. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'll leave a link in the description to check out the first demo if you're interested. The demo actually wasn't out yet when I first started working on this video, so hey, good timing. But as for the original game, it's not something I could recommend to just anyone. But if you're a big fan of the tone and style of 2000 Sonic, I think you'll find it a lot more fun than its reputation will lead you to believe. With all that said, fuck Levitated Ruin! Holy shit!